Hey, Siobhan.
Hey,
We're going to talk today about that plants have consciousness. I know that you've been doing some research, so maybe you'd like to tell us what the research is and your motivation for the research.
okay, right. I don't know where to start. Maybe I'll start with the motivation. I think it started with before I learned how to meditate, I just kind of was meditating with trees while I was on the Camino de Santiago a long time ago, like
Hmm.
20 years ago or nearly, that it just kind of felt natural too, because it was like I got into a meditation just from walking every day and being alone all day walking. And I just
Hmm.
started drawn towards certain things to connecting with plants. And I had experiences that then and another later when I learned like meditation techniques. I don't know, I just kind of my natural inclination was to try them out on plants, was like meditation techniques for connecting with other people. But yeah, so I had experiences of like meditating with plants and feeling like aware of their consciousness and aware that there was another being there and that it was like a being that was very like kind and caring.
Hmm.
And it's something I never talked about, or I did sometimes. I remember saying, like, when I was like really young to a friend, I wonder what it's like being a tree. And she was like, that's ridiculous. A tree doesn't know what it's like to be a tree, and realizing other people saw plants as, even though they're alive, they're in the kingdom of living things, and there's so many things they share with us
Hmm.
that the general assumption is that they're inanimate. They're treated like inanimate objects.
Yeah.
Um, well, like yeah, over the last few years, I kept hearing bits and pieces coming out. Like I mean, of different scientific evidence. Like I mean, I think it was a good few years back. There was like they were able to show that plants grew better when they were sang to. There was a scientist called Susan Simon who she did a lot of the research on the mycorrhizal connections between plants underground that most people are aware of now. I don't know if you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, is it that the like plants are all connected under the ground through their roots and they send signals from one tree to the other and share things and all? Is that though?
Yeah, that's it. But then they're connected through mycorrhizae to through fungal threads.
Oh, okay. What's that word? Say that word again.
And mycorrhizal
Mycorrhiza. Okay.
yeah, mycorrhizal fungal threads. So it's the fungus that is joined in a symbiotic relationship with them that helps them communicate. But is
Okay.
it like got the main thing is like that, yeah, like what you're saying, that they communicate with each other and they share resources with each other. Yeah, and it can be quite complex. They're able to tell each other, like a tree on one side of the forest can get attacked by a pest, and I can let a tree on the other side of the forest know the pest is coming, and that tree starts to creating its own natural kind of pest repellent and is ready.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool.
And they help their own species and their own children out more, but they help different species as well. And obviously
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that they even help other species and even between kingdoms, because obviously the mushrooms and, well, not mushrooms is just one part of a fungus. The fungi and plants living symbiotically with each other and exchanging. The
Yeah.
plants are giving the fungi sugars, and the fungi are giving the plants um different nutrients and water.
Can I
Uh,
ask you one question? This kind of changing the subject a bit, but before you go on to the next thing, just because I'm curious. When
oh,
you said that you meditated with plants,
mhm.
did you mean, just to clarify, like did you just sit down by a tree or a plant and meditate, like doing your own thing, or you were specifically kind of making an attempt to tune into that tree or plant?
Oh, I guess I was attempting to tune into it. I don't even know what made me do it, but I just felt called to it. And the first
Yeah.
time I didn't know, I'd never been taught any meditation.
Hmm.
I was in a sort of meditative state from spending so much time alone, and I just felt an urge to kind of connect with a tree and see.
Yeah.
And I ended up, yeah, like when I learned to meditate years later, a couple not long,
Yeah.
like a year later actually, like
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's the same state now that I've been taught the techniques. That's the same state as I ended up in at that time.
Yeah. And how would you like? you know the way there's like thousands of different types of meditation.
Yeah, yeah.
And now, like what I understand now as meditation is kind of like this is just my thing, but like I feel like true meditation is kind of not doing anything at all. So you're really letting go of everything and just really being open and really not even having an intention at all. So then I wonder how would you do this kind of meditation? Like so you have an intention at least, is it?
Yeah, yeah, it can get kind of complicated, all the different meditation techniques. And I was
Mm.
like really into some kind, like I was, when I first knew years ago, I was really big into Tantra, and that was my
Mm-hmm.
whole life. And now
Yeah.
I'm like, Buddhism is more of my practice now, but I don't see them in conflict with each other. And then I do
Mm.
shamanic stuff as well. That in my experience, they all get you to the same state.
Yeah.
And whatever you start with, whatever intention you start with, you have to let go of all your intentions and get to a place of doing nothing.
Yeah.
Um,
Can I interrupt you for a second?
yeah.
You know, just in relation to connecting with trees, so you say they all get you to the same state. So would that be like that which is like beyond all states? You know, like you're recognizing what you truly are beyond everything. So then you kind of just it somehow naturally happens that you feel the unity between all things, and maybe you're a bit more sensitive to everything, you know, and you just naturally know, like you might naturally know how somebody is feeling or and maybe the same with a tree. Even though I am familiar with that state, but I have to say I don't really connect with plants or anything.
Okay, I'd say I bet if you tried, you would, especially if you're already, you know, experienced meditator. It'd have to,
Mm,
I'd imagine it would come easier. Yeah, because
mm,
it's like I kind of lost touch with this stuff and then got back in touch with it earlier this year, and I've been really excited about it. And just sat down because I started with because like years ago I can't remember what I did, but I know what I do now is like I kind of sit down with the intention of connecting with a tree, and I just
mm.
keep reminding myself. I remind myself that this tree is a being, and it's not less than me. It's equal, or possibly, yeah, it's equal, if not more,
Yeah,
wiser than me. And then I just sit down and let go, and to have something little to do. What I usually like, you kind of need something. Sometimes it makes
mm,
it easier to not wander. Is like when I breathe out, I kind of offer it everything, and
yeah, okay.
I breathe in, I kind of, receive whatever it wants to give.
Mm,
And if I'm having a bad day where I'm more in my head and like it might not always work, but if I give it a lot, like I usually give it 10 minutes most days. But if
mm,
I have full, and if it's a good day, I will connect in 10 minutes. But it'll always, if you give it a half an hour or an hour, I'll always like become just so aware of this plant's consciousness and get a lovely feeling of well-being, like that it's supporting me. And
yeah,
sometimes I've even gotten messages, although that is not something that the scientists are able to verify yet, and like maybe someday they
yeah.
will. But that's something I felt at times.
Part of my mind is would be saying like, well, what's the kind of like what's the point or what's the purpose? And then I kind of felt like, well, if there was like a really wise teacher, like it's amazing to go and sit with wise teachers and they don't even have to say anything, you know, like just being in the presence of somebody who's really rooted in presence and in just in the wisdom of the universe or something, let's say. Um, it's amazing to be in their presence. So in that way, this is like kind of like the answer to myself, but you can tell me what it is for you. So I imagine like going to sit with like a wise tree or just being in nature. Of course, I think we all know that being in nature does feel amazing and it brings us into our own presence. Like we kind of naturally get very present if you just sit in nature or take a walk in nature. But
Mm.
at least for me, like it's not like I don't really think about it or I don't feel like it's because I'm in the presence of wise teacher or something. Even though it probably is. Maybe it is. So you tell me, I don't.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a big part of it. Um, and that plants are, I suppose wise is a subjective word, and it's all subjective. But like
Yeah,
the other way of looking at it, I think, is like plants are they're a lot less individualistic than us. Like
yeah,
they live more in communities, and they do like of support. Like even sometimes there isn't a clear line between where one plant ends and another begins, but sometimes they reproduce that way.
You
You
know,
know,
that's a very that's a good way to say what wise is. You didn't do it on
yeah,
purpose. I don't think you did it on purpose. You said wise is subjective, and then you went on to say how plants are. But I think that is a very good description of what wisdom is. You know, that you're not taking yourself to be separate, and you're like living in a community and reliant on like the whole.
yeah. I think plants they're a lot more. Obviously, we are completely interdependent and as well, and like we live. You know, our bodies are colonized with like billions of bacteria and fungi and
Hmm.
everything like that.
Hmm.
We're not one being, but we really see it that way. But our plants are much more in that
Yeah.
mix. No, they're not separate. And I think that's one of the main things I get from them, that feeling of interconnectedness and not caring about my own ego.
Yeah.
Um, I think,
So
yeah.
does it feel like when you meditate with them or commune, that's a good word.
Yeah.
When you commune with them, that you kind of get brought into that way of being, like the non-separated way, and just like acknowledge really that you're not separate as well. Is it like that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a big weight off. It's such a relief to be in that state.
Yeah. So like that's a huge benefit. Is that the benefit? Because that's what it would be for me. Like I feel
Um,
like that's like a huge benefit alone. Like maybe there's loads of other things that you've been contemplating, but
That's the main benefit of meditating with plants. And I did some the other times when I spent longer, because it's very easy to get there. When I was doing more shamanic practices, I do different things. Where I did a very long meditation with an alder tree, and then did a drum journey afterwards to kind of,
Mhm.
you know, and like spend time drawing the tree and brought a leaf in and yeah, did a drum journey and went on a journey to meet the spirit of the tree. um, at that time, I got some like really good messages, more wisdom and more specific advice.
Mhm.
Uh, so, oh yeah. And then different plants have different sort of essences. I mean, you can meditate with plants without all this. This is the other shamanic layer, which is probably more controversial that I'm into. Like, yeah, so plants have different, I suppose, kind of personalities and essences. Like,
Mhm.
um, which is like you can kind of experience yourself, and you can also kind of find out through folklore, and you can also experience yourself and then check up the folklore adds up.
Mhm.
Because, yeah, so for example, like willow trees have always been connected with like art and music and
Mhm.
creativity, and kind of receptivity and stuff. And they're also like really
Mhm.
flexible because they bend in the wind.
Yeah.
And like alder was the one I meditated with that time. I didn't even look up anything about it. It's like really you could put it in any soil and it'll just be super strong no matter where you put it, and it'll make everything around it strong because
Mm.
it puts nitrogen into the soil. So it's just kind of weird to even see it in like some bleak place where everything is struggling, and it's just there, just like beaming with vitality no matter what you do, like
Mm.
whether dry or wet or depleted. And I was like having problems with my health, which is why I was drawn to meditate with the elder, to sort
Mhm.
of kind of learn from its wisdom about how to be so strong.
Yeah. That's really, it sounds really beneficial to know, like because let's say you have a lot of knowledge about these things like plants and trees and all what they do. And then someone like me, I wouldn't know anything. I'm like, even though I do like to be in nature, I could be considered like the opposite, like almost like a city girl, just going around in the city where all the buildings are. And also I really like I wouldn't even be able to recognize most trees, so
Mm-hmm.
then I do feel like to have like when I hear you talk and I feel like, oh yeah, that sounds really good. And I know it would be good because of course I've had experiences, but I still think I'm probably not going to give all of my time to know about all the different plants and trees and what one is good for what. So then someone like you, I feel would be good because then let's say if I want to go and meditate with a tree, I don't
Yeah.
want to, because it's not my calling, you know. So I don't want to spend a lot of time figuring out which tree is good for what. Like I just
Yeah.
want to know where the tree is and I'll go and do it. But like I basically want all the work done for it, except for the sitting. So therefore, like I think people like you are really good
I
to
also think though that sometimes I wish I didn't know so much because I'm trying to like go with my intuition now and go with like which plant. So I stepped out in my garden and went, I want vitality. I want a plant that will teach me vitality. And I want to just trust like my feeling, but like I
mm,
can't turn off my head and all the stuff like no. I think it'd be so much more interesting to be drawn towards by feeling and then look up afterwards or ask somebody and see if you got it right because I can't really test myself so much, not in Ireland.
that's a really good point. I actually used to do stuff like that all the
Mhm.
time. Not really so much with trees and all, but like I would step out and I'd have the kind of feeling, you know, like I just want to be guided. And maybe I'd feel like if I needed help with something, you know, like maybe I had some challenge or I didn't know how to make a certain decision or whatever it was going on in my being, you know, and I'd just step out and I'd feel like I want to be guided towards like help or something and just let life move me and flow. And like it's really amazing and it does work, you know. So
Yeah.
hearing you reflect that back, it's also true as well. Like, you know, I think you could easily just, if you're interested in something like that, to go, like for me, let's say I could go to like Killiney Hill, and if I want to
Mhm.
spend some time, just yeah, like you actually can't get it wrong these things. You know, like
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
no such thing as a mistake because you just get drawn where you get drawn. And of course, if you're drawn there, it definitely feels good, you know,
Yeah.
because whatever you're feeling can't be wrong, you know,
Yeah.
and then even like you could look it up after, or you could also not, you know.
Yes.
I'm very simplistic. I don't I find great joy actually in not knowing things,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
I know most people like to know things as
Yeah.
well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's just curiosity kind of, but if you're probably not, yeah, you just trust your experience. You know that you got something from it. You know what you got from it. There's no need
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah, but you know what? I think you still probably could, even though, like you're saying, you know too much, and you know maybe it would be hard. Yeah, but you could like a bit, like let's say if you recognize the trees, you'd have all the information coming in. Yeah. You'd have to
Mhm.
blindfold yourself or something. Maybe.
Could do.
I was gonna say you could just do it, but like you can't really because you can't help what you know.
It's hard to turn your head off completely.
Yeah,
And
that type of stuff.
I think if I went somewhere really exotic, or even if I went to the botanic gardens where there's a lot of plants from different, I don't know all the plants there, like plants from
Yeah,
other parts of the world. Though even there's a part of my mind that's like trying to fit it into the key, what's the families, because sometimes you can be like, oh, this is really exotic, but I know it looks a bit like a geranium, and I'm like, I really want to
yeah,
look at that family or
yeah.
whatever.
I
Yeah,
guess
no.
like also we just have to like the same way the trees are a certain way, you
Mhm.
know, like in the same way we are a certain way. So I guess like you just have to accept it. You're just like that,
Yeah, that's it.
you know, as well. It's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about trees a bit. What about like other plants and what we
Well,
might learn from them? Like, is it that purely just to be in that non-separated state? Because I think that's wonderful. But I mean, you definitely don't have to leave your house for that.
no, yeah, and different things, different techniques work for different people. I think, some people will just be their meditation technique, be just sitting in silence and nothing else, and then another
Hmm.
person might do better with being outside with plants. I definitely, yeah, for
Yeah.
me, even though I do like just sitting with my eyes closed inside, there's something bigger happens to me when I go out. I connect with plants. That just
Yeah.
works for me.
More that
Mhm.
like even though I can know that I'm not separate and I could feel that like often, but still to connect with the natural world, like
Mhm.
nature, you know, it's a there's something I don't know what I don't know how to find words, but something very beautiful about it and something very kind of calling. I did a Hachuma ceremony recently and like I don't feel like I had any huge amazing experiences or anything, it was more like afterwards, I felt like the spirit of the plant was with me for about a month.
Cool. Okay.
And I just kind of felt somehow more sensitive towards nature or something,
Yeah.
and more also wanting to, like, I have a tree in my back garden and I barely ever go out to it,
Mm-hmm.
and but it was nice, and I hadn't even been out under my tree looking up at it around. But after I came back, I was more like feeling to go out and be in the ground, like, and just feel the ground and look at the sky and lie under my tree and like just appreciate the shapes of all of it, but like
Yeah.
normally I just hadn't been like that. Just very appreciative of nature and kind of attuned. It's not just like appreciating with your eyes, but somehow my body kind of felt attuned, and I felt like that spirit of Hachuma, the Hachuma plant, was with me somehow, like guiding me, like as if in the same way, like maybe some kind of, you might have a spirit guide or something, and you get these kind
Yeah.
of maybe just subtle intuitions about them, like it's not like a big loud in your face thing, but subtly there's something going on. So
Yeah.
kind of felt like that, and that's not here anymore. Um,
Yeah.
so there's a distinct, and it wasn't there before, so there is a distinct thing, and I felt like, oh yeah, it is something that somewhere in my being, like I don't really know why, but there is interest in just being more connected to the natural world.
Yeah. And I think, do you ever hear of, like, I have the word right, biophilia? Um,
I don't know
uh,
that.
biophilia thesis, I think it was. It's basically, it's like the philosophy that we need, that different species need each other, and that we need, like, to be mixing with lots of different species. It's probably like part of what people feel the urge to get pets. And I think that's why we feel good out in nature, or connecting with, you have a little moment where you get close to a bird or whatever. It's like that. It's just such an important part of, like, our mental well-being, and our ancestors would have been so intertwined with it, that something in this just kind of sings, like, when we connect to it, like that, this is right, this is good for me,
Yeah, that's
is
true.
good.
That's something that's not really talked about that much, isn't it? But it's true. Like we often talk about, if we're talking about mental health or something, like people talk about the importance of just being social and social engagement and having somebody to talk to and all of that kind of thing. And even there's a lot of talk these days about regulating your nervous system.
And
Yeah,
nature
but
regulating the nervous system.
nature regulates it that way. But one of the things they say that's really good for regulating your nervous system is spontaneous social engagement.
Okay,
Um,
spontaneous.
Spontaneous, yeah. So I guess that probably just means like unplanned, or like, when you just bump into someone on the street, or maybe if you go to a party or something, like you don't know what's gonna happen. So it's just like, well, you're kind of, I guess you're kind of in the unknown, and you're like, you become alive. But there's not a lot of talk publicly. Like there probably is, like maybe you're more familiar with that, but about that, what you just said about
No, there's
the,
not enough talk about it. There is some, but there's not enough. So that's what I want. That's why I kind of came on the podcast. I want to talk
yeah,
about all of these things that there are scientists doing. There's, like, even and historians, and there's stuff that I'm coming across that's linking all this, but I don't think it's in the mainstream enough, and that's why I want to
yeah,
talk about it. Another thing, like, do you know, like, people do psychedelic things like ayahuasca and magic mushrooms, and they feel the
yeah,
spirit with them for a while,
yeah. Hmm.
thing. But something else that I think a lot of people don't know is that you could do that with any plant. It's easier. Certain plants are really louder, or like have a really strong personality, a really strong spirit, and it's easier to get that connection. But, like,
Yeah.
by even meditating with any plant and forming a good connection with it, you can also get that experience of the spirit staying with you for a while as a guide.
Oh, and you don't have to ingest it.
You don't have to, and you can also ingest it. And it's another thing is like that, like a botanist will tell you, like, that all plants are psychoactive, actually. Um,
Well,
like
yeah,
all
it makes sense. Like, even everything that we take into our body, like has an effect on us in that way. It makes sense.
inner chemistry a bit, and
Yeah,
subtle, but some things, like even coffee and, like, chocolate, are more noticeable, and then other
yeah,
things are really, really noticeable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you say all plants are psychoactive, what do you mean? Like every plant would affect our psyche in some way?
Yeah, like every plant will affect your brain chemistry a little bit, but
Mm.
we're just would probably just we're taking in so much stuff all the time that it's hard to notice it all.
Okay, I'm having this kind of little imagination. So I have like three plants upstairs.
Yeah.
And let's say if I brought one plant down and I start sitting with it, what do you think I could do with it? Like, I'll tell you what I have. I have a baby spider plant. It's really small.
Okay.
I have a snake plant. Oh yeah, I also have a peace lily.
Oh, peace lily. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
good for the oxygen too. Yeah.
I don't know, like I probably will now after talking to you have a go at it. But like
Hmm.
I feel like what would probably happen is I'd sit there and I'd probably meditate, I'd probably talk to it, tune into it or something, but I'd probably feel like I was like just being a weirdo. Even
Oh
though
yeah.
of course I've heard like that you can talk to plants and all, and I believe it as well. I believe
Yeah.
it, but I still don't do it that
Hmm.
much. You know,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't.
outside of the realm of our like what our normal everyday life. So yeah, you do feel like a weirdo the first time. And
Yeah.
give it a go. And like our like this weird thing, it's not really that weird, just weird because life is so different now. But
Yeah.
like all indigenous people around the world, like any anthropologists have studied, including Irish people,
Yeah.
uh, where like saw all of nature as conscious and alive, and you
Yeah, that's true.
and including inanimate stuff like rocks or mountains or rivers, and would have like prayed to all of these things. And so it was so normal at one stage, and
Yeah.
it kind of changed gradually. It was like the more centralized things came, the more people kind of dominated each other, the more that stuff got pushed out.
Yeah.
Like beginning with farming, because when people started farming, they started dividing up land and being like, I own this. And that's
Yeah.
like a relationship with nature already than just like being out. When you're a hunter and gatherer, you're just kind of you're just one piece of the
Mm.
whole, and you're on equal grounds with everything, but you start to like put a line around and say, I own it. This nature is an inanimate thing belonging to me.
Yeah.
And then like more as big empires came about, like as well, that affected people, more and more that consciousness went. And Christianity as well kind of had an influence, because they start saying like God is out there, like God is this like entity that's outside of our reality, up above it, controlling things.
Yeah.
That till then, spirit was infused in everything. God was infused in everything, and it was more respect for nature because
Mm.
everything has God in it. Like, how could you like poison a river, or chop down a tree without asking permission if you believe God is in it?
Yeah.
Uh,
But it's
so
mad them like because that sounds beautiful and that sounds perfect and it sounds like what we aspire to. And sometimes we start to live like that a bit. But then I wonder, so those people must have been totally awake and totally fine. Because like
it sounds.
when you know that and when you're living in an environment and you know that God is in everything, including you, then
Mhm.
like you really it's not like that life can't be hard. I think life can still be hard and you can still have challenges, but you can't really have any problems. So was it like that then?
I don't know. I wasn't there. It just sounds.
It sounds like it though, doesn't
Yeah, we can only know what we know, which is what people wrote down or what they passed on before writing through, you
it?
know, folk stories and songs and stuff. So we can't know, but I know it's crazy. It does sound like they were a lot more enlightened, and obviously there was problems, and there was still some tribes that fought with each other, and it was still
Mm.
like but like it does sound better.
But I think they still kind of kept God away from them. The few things that I've heard, like even when people are in tune with nature and everything, there was I'm terrible now with actual real stories. But like even when they're very in tune with nature, there were still like sacrifices and all, like you must sacrifice this goat
Yeah.
or something to like appease the gods. It
Mhm.
was more like that type of thing. So, there's still
So yeah,
well, maybe not keeping God away, but maybe there were still like beliefs. There were still like just like far out beliefs. that would make you continue to suffer.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't make sense that people were completely enlightened because sort of thing like you'd wonder if they had it all figured out, how did they, what made them want to get away from their life? There must have been something they were like,
Yeah.
had the
You
idea
wouldn't
that,
change anything. You wouldn't continue to change stuff like.
yeah, so they must have had this craving for thinking they could make life better when they started farming and building towns and,
Yeah.
make life more complicated. Yeah, we can only speculate. Um,
Yeah.
I was researching loads. I just went down this rabbit hole of trying to
Mhm.
figure out, like, partly how things got so far away from that consciousness that all nature was gone. Yeah,
Mm.
partly I was trying to figure out, like, how did we get into a state of like a state of mind or a state of seeing things that we've kind of, it's become so normal to do so much destruction.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was some things I heard, and then I read a few books about like the 16th and 17th century. It was
Mm.
kind of like the final nails in the coffin of um seeing nature as dead, basically seeing yourself separate as nature and nature as
Mm.
a dead, inanimate thing. And it's
Yeah.
like around like the time of colonialism starting, and there was, so I was saying, like, I think that when they put like a wall around something, said I own this, that
Mm.
makes it inanimate. But there was, until like the 17th century, there was still lands that were like lands in Europe that were common lands that
Mm.
peasants used. So a lot of people still, even though this kind of whole thing of ownership and domination existed, there was still like a lot of peasants that lived in that kind of equal grounds with
Mm.
nature, equal relationship with nature,
Yeah.
and not on ownership. So those things were closed off around that time, and it was like a lot of philosophical and scientific, all the kind of like opinions that were coming out around that time. A lot of
Mm.
people, like Descartes was really big, kind of saying, and like lots of other people saying the same kind of thing, saying very explicitly God is outside of nature. The beasts are like are low, and we need to separate ourselves from them. We
Mm.
need to deny any of our urges that are similar to what the other animals have, and we need to
Mm.
assert our domination. So all this thinking was going about, and all these practices, and they started like mining more and chopping forests down more. But the weird thing is, like, that at the same time as that, as the separation from the rest of nature, kind of like misogyny grew and racism grew, and like
Mm.
class divisions grew, that just people just seem to separate themselves from other people more, go, okay, you're a different
Yeah.
gender, you're not really conscious, you don't count, you're a different color than me, you don't count, you're not like alive in the same way I am. And
Yeah.
or even just because you're a peasant, because you're not from the same class as me, all these divisions, it all kind of sped up
Yeah.
around the time. So that's another reason why I think it's important to be aware that plants are conscious and connect with them, because I think once you start separating off parts of nature, or any being, I think it's the same process that like allows us to separate ourselves from each other, and then from
Yeah.
our bodies even, like,
Yeah.
because that all happened around that same time. More body shame like grew, like it became like being naked became illegal. Dinner manners, the whole kind of like elaborate kind of table manners, because became a thing, because people
Mm.
couldn't stand to see that, like, oh, animals eat and so do we, and we're too similar. We need to like eat in the poshest way possible so we can believe we're not the
Oh
same.
yeah. Oh yeah, that's very interesting. The human mind is crazy. It will just like create, basically just like that, creates differences where there aren't any. So it's just
Yeah,
making them up, and it'll continue making them up more and more and more, and it'll continue making more probably that we haven't even thought of yet.
yeah,
But like, yeah, so your kind of invitation is to invite us back to non-differentiation, really.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful. I think like I think even especially for people like, so because I'm very much in the field of like, I mean, I talk to people and I'm interested in, let's say, just kind of waking up you know, like, and that means just waking up to the truth of who you are. But I think like it can't just end with, you know, so of course within that field, you know, like there's talk of like that we're not separate, but there's not a lot of, even though I think we inherently know that there's no separation between anything, but I
Yeah.
still think it's very important to experience it, not just, you know, not just know it, you know, so you can sit here and meditate and be like, okay, you know, like I'm one with everything and there's no differences with everything. You know, it's the same like with people or with plants. You can still experientially experience them as being different. So I guess it's bringing our own consciousness really to things not being different. The way I said, like if I brought my plant down here and I started like talking to her or meditating with it, like I'd probably be laughing at myself as well, and maybe judging myself a bit. But like I feel like there's an invitation there
Mhm.
to just be more open to that. And it doesn't mean, I don't think it even means you have to start talking to things, because it can be, it's not necessarily an outward behavior, it's more like an inner attitude. I think
Yeah,
you can have the inner attitude of, yeah, just the inner attitude that it's a being. Like, so if I walk into, even if I walk into a room, like, and there's plants in there, it's not like I'm walking into an empty room.
hmm yeah, yeah, just being aware, and it's just it just feels nice to start to. That's the thing.
Mm,
Start like thinking that way, and I have to remind myself,
mm,
like, especially depends, like, you know, if I'm having a day where I'm more in my head and I'm like feeling less connected, like that, I'm stepping out. Like I live on a farm, so I'm surrounded by a lot of nature,
yeah,
and remind myself when I step out my door that I'm surrounded by, you know, billions of beings. Because if you go down to bacteria and everything as well, and that they
yeah,
know you're there, and it
yeah,
just gives a very different flavor to reality than
mm,
like the way of seeing things that I was brought up in. That
yeah.
you're alone until you see a person.
I did have an experience there a while ago, and I was in a garden and I was just lying on the ground. I think I was lying on my front, and I started to feel like, I don't know, like I could feel all energy in my body, but it felt like I was totally connected to the earth underneath,
Mhm.
you know, almost like there was all like roots. I don't really know what, but like there was just like a total connection between my body and the ground. And there was
Mhm.
just some kind of understanding of like that the ground was happy, that like it's really happy when people go and lie on it. And
Mm.
how the connection is like, so the sun comes out, you know, so usually we don't really go and lie on the ground unless the sun comes out. So when the
Mhm.
sun comes out, we all go and we lie on the ground, you know, we lie on beaches, we lie in parks, we lie
Yeah.
all kinds of places. And then I don't know exactly what happens, like I didn't have a huge insight, but just that the whole environment, you know, because what's under the ground is all the roots of the trees, and you know better, whatever that word you used for all the fungi. I don't know what that word was. But I just felt like that the ground and whatever was under there was like really happy, and there was a relationship between
Mm.
my body and the ground, and just how everything was connected, like it's cyclical. So even including the sunshine, you know, and the sun's not even in this planet really, you know, of course we're
Yeah.
dependent on it, but like that. And I'm sure there's more, you know, my view,
Yeah.
that perception that I had was probably somewhat limited, but I was able to see a kind of a cycle, and how important it is for humans to connect with the earth, and they get something from us. And like you said, I like you used the word symbiotic a few times. I thought
Mhm.
it was really good. And
Mhm.
yeah, and just I just feel like that when you're talking, like how important it is to um just really connect with everything. And it's not only for us, it's for the unity of everything. So it's not really like I keep talking, I keep kind of almost like downplaying it, I think, by talking about like just plants in my bedroom. You
Mhm.
know, but it's because like I'm not very connected to nature. So when I'm thinking about plants, I'm thinking about the plants in my bedroom. But like it's much bigger than that, of course. You know, like it's really when we're connected to all of nature. And nature is everywhere, you know, like I have grass in my garden,
Mm.
you know, and
Yeah.
I have a big huge tree. Like, so I don't live in the countryside, you know, but like I just live in a suburban place. And even if you live in the city, you know, I'm sure there's still nature. And I don't know how it is actually in nature. You might have an insight about this, but you know, if you're in the city, there's concrete, you know, but
Yeah.
there's still like soil underneath that concrete. And there's still the odd tree here and there. So I'm sure there still is a connection to the environment, even in a
Oh,
city.
yeah. Oh, definitely, yeah. And I mean, everything is, I mean, like everything is covered in bacteria and
Yeah.
virus. Think of that as a bad thing now, but like more like almost all of them are benign or even helpful. But everything is teeming with life. You can't get rid of it. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, there's more life in the soil in the countryside where it's looked after. Well, not all the countryside. Some of the countryside is soaked in
Yeah.
chemicals. But like, yeah, being under concrete, it's not as healthy, but it's still full of life and tree roots. Tree roots go really far, and especially the mycorrhiza goes really far. So, there's
Yeah.
yeah, all surrounded by life. Even inside
Mm.
a room, like you're surrounded by microorganisms, and you're covered in them, and
Yeah.
it's
Well,
just easy, more obvious out in nature. And I'm using those words and then saying them. I want to like get away from talking like that, like out in nature and connecting to nature, because it's like we're nature
yeah,
and
as if
every
it's something different. As if it's something
yeah,
different, but it's not. Yeah, I think it's important to say, yeah, in our language where it is, and then change it.
saying humans and nature, and it's like we're nature, and even everything we've made in our houses is made out of nature. Like there is
Yeah.
no like,
So what do you
different.
think we can do to, let's say, attune to, because I kind of feel like it's like attuning to the oneness of everything. It's a very non-personal thing. It's not about like us gaining personally or, but it's just like I feel like what you're saying is that we humans we're a part of nature, we're a part of everything. So by being aware of the consciousness in everything, really, but like you're saying, like plants and trees, by being aware of the consciousness there, we're kind of getting attuned and allowing ourselves to be a part of that system, really.
Yeah.
Um, so is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I was wondering if there's anything that like people who are listening could do to
Okay. Yeah.
attune to that what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think just reminding yourself that you're surrounded by conscious beings when you're
Mm,
in, well, you're always in nature, but like when you're around plants or
mm,
fungi or anything else, um, just reminding yourself and don't expect to have a big experience, because you put yourself under pressure to have a big magical
mm,
experience, which I do sometimes, and you kind of, because if I have a big magical feeling experience, then when I
mm.
go out the next day, I'm expecting it again, and then you kind of get closed off with the expectations. But having no
Yeah.
expectations and spending time with plants, but this goes for every living being, but just plants are just what I've had the most experience with. I know
Yeah.
when connecting with the fungi
Mm.
kingdom, which is just as intelligent. Maybe, yeah, they're very intelligent kingdom, closer to us than they are to plants. Than we're closer to us than any other kingdom, the fungi kingdom.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, um,
What do you mean, like they're closer to us?
yeah. Like genetically, even though genetically they can kind of trace back things, and they can trace us
Yeah.
back. At one point, we were similar
Okay.
ancestors to apes, and then they trace us back further. We can go rodents, and obviously the animal kingdom goes back a long, long, long time. But
Hmm.
before the kingdom split, the fungi kingdom is the one that the animal kingdom is closest to,
Okay.
um, and they're closer to us than they are to plants. Yet,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh.
And even though we know this, well, it's a known fact scientifically now.
Mm-hmm.
Like in universities, they usually put the fungi like researchers in the botany department, which makes no sense because we know so little about fungi. It's a small
Mm.
area to go in, but compared to like other areas of nature, it's a small
Yeah.
area. And like the way their signals travel on their the mycorrhiza, the hyphae threads that they,
Mm.
it's really similar to how it's electrical pulses, and it's really similar to how the
Mm.
signals travel around our brain and our neurons.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that, like that they're kind of like the Earth's nervous system. Sometime
Yeah,
recently. Is it
yeah,
like that?
because they're like, yeah, kind of connecting the plants in that same way as our brain is connected, and then now they reckon that they have a language, or there's like the communication is quite complex, and you could call it a language. Scientists are still arguing like that there's not enough evidence, but they say there's at least 50 different words that they use and that they're in sentences that are quite complex. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
Oh, I've gone off on it. Oh, yeah.
There's this thing in my mind now, but like there's also the counter argument, so I'll just tell you. One part of me says, but we're probably connected anyway to nature. Like you say, we're not just connected to nature because we are part of nature, whether we know it or not.
Yeah.
So one part of me says that's the kind of, I have this kind of cynic, I have an inner cynic, kind of skeptic and like cynic. So that part of me says that it's like we're connected anyway. So like, what difference does it make? But then I also know that I remember people saying to me, well, you're already like totally enlightened, you're already awake. But I kind of felt like, yeah, but like if I don't know it, what use is that to me?
Yeah.
It's like of no use whatsoever. And there really is, it's a kind of a huge big difference. Like if obviously you are who you are, and even like we're saying that everything is connected, but there's also everything is connected and everything is also God. So you're more than connect. So even saying you're connected to God is also like using one word too much. You're not connected to God. Like everything is God, but if you don't know that, you're not going to get any peace from that, if it's just a belief, so it can't really just be a belief. Like I think we were saying that already earlier. So we have to kind of experience it and get more conscious about it, I suppose, bring our consciousness to that. So when you say, just be conscious of it, and I think you can bring it in that way. Like, so you're saying it, and we're having this conversation. But for some people, like kind of including me, I'm like borderline. It's just an idea, because and even the fact, I suppose, I know, so I'm more familiar with talking to people about God and stuff. So people say that they haven't ever experienced God. And even when you talk about that, like really everybody does experience God, but they just don't know it. But the thing is, if you don't know it, that's a huge thing. If you're not conscious about it, then you're gonna suffer. So everybody is experiencing God all the time because there's nothing else to experience. Like and in the same way, so everything is, we're using different words, but like everything is nature if you don't know it. So I wonder how, or is there a way, or what comes to your mind when I'm saying that? Like, is there a way to be more conscious? So you're saying just be conscious, but you can't make yourself be conscious about it. Just you can invite yourself to be conscious about it. And I think that does something.
I think you invite yourself. I think that's it. And I want to say, like, what you were saying there would all like make sense, and it's good to ask questions and be cynical and just like not just be like naive, but like saying like I think what you're saying, part of what you're saying is like someone could say, sure, we're all connected to nature and we're part of nature. There's no need to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth saying like that. There's so many people out there recommending different spiritual practices and meditation practices, and it can be very overwhelming. And everyone's like, you need to do this one. This is the best one.
Yeah.
And like if a person is like very at peace and very happy and doing nothing, or with the practice they have, like maybe there is no need for them to do anything else. But like what I feel about the like say being in nature and reminding yourself that it's alive, or connecting with plants, that if you feel like you need more peace or more inspiration or more support in your life, that this thing is there. It's an option. It's not this way of seeing things is there, and that's what I kind of want to let people know, if they need it. That it can be very powerful one for a lot of people.
Yeah. And can you help people with that? Like if someone was to contact you, or do you do stuff on your farm there in that respect?
I'm only starting to, and it's kind of funny because I've kind of gone full circle, because a long time ago I was a tantra teacher, which was about kind of teaching people how to connect to their bodies and each other, which instinctively at the time kind of did with, I instinctively brought nature and the elements into it, because that was my way, and I don't even know where I got that from. But I kind of jumped into, I was very young for what I was taking on, Yeah, I jumped into that too fast, too young, without and then Tantra is a whole can of worms. What I'm trying to say is, yeah, so, but then I got into horticulture and then, and permaculture and like cultivating plants in a way that's really working with nature and living on a farm and creating an eco village and all of these things. And that way came back to in the last few years to my meditation practice being really connected to being with nature and plants and things. And
Yeah.
I'm still because still it's kind of coming full circle with the tantra practices I did years ago, but this is something I feel more able to it comes more naturally to me, or it's more doable. And so it's a long time since I taught meditation, except maybe sometimes to friends in a relaxed way.
Yeah.
Though I have a really strong practice myself, but I feel it calling me again. So I'm planning to start in February with like a short 2 hour workshop, which I'm thinking of calling like nature embodiment.
Oh yeah.
And
Cool.
so it's kind of bringing together what I've learned from my tantra practice over the years and from Buddhism and from shamanism and from just my own experiences with nature. So yeah, that's a very long way of saying that yes, I think I can help people with this, but I'm only starting. It's been a personal practice for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm only kind of starting to share it with people.
And is there anything else you want to say before we're finished?
Um, yeah, I guess that what I want to say is that yeah, that I do have experience of like helping people have some very deep experiences in connecting to their bodies and themselves. I feel like it can bring to this kind of to the work that this the work that I'm doing now, the work that I want to start doing with people again. Yeah, because now a lot of like the practices I'm doing with nature is yeah, because it's like connecting with plants and other beings in the environment and being connected. I think when you're connected to your own body, it's more powerful than you're grounded in your own body.
Yeah.
And even like being aware of how the different elements live in your body and
Yeah.
how similar we are to all the beings around us. It's a good starting point because that's the piece of nature that's closest to you.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah. Would you say that's like a foundation? Like, I guess, but everyone comes into things at different times,
yeah,
like, so there'll probably be people that come, let's say if you start, um, or if anybody wanted to start kind of being more conscious and connected with nature, everyone's at different levels, like, so everybody listening to this might be at a different kind of understanding in their own being, so some people might be, like, so even for me, even though I've been really interested in spirituality for years, like since I was 18 or something, I've only well, I started, let's say, like only maybe 12 years ago, feeling like bringing my energy into my body and being aware of what's happening in my body. But I feel like that's only really got really serious, even though I wouldn't have said that 10 years ago. But like, I feel like it's only really getting very authentic and genuine and really kind of fine-tuned, like noticing really everything that's happening in my body. That's only been happening in the last 2 years. And maybe in another 5 years, I'll say, no, it's only starting now. You never know, like, because you're just wherever you are. But
yeah,
when I hear you saying that, like, it makes sense to have a strong foundation in really being clear about feeling what's happening in your body before you then can feel like, so if I know what's happening in my body now, then when someone comes into the room, like
yeah.
if you come into the room, then I'll be much more clear about how your presence affects me, you know. And then when you go, or then if someone else comes in, or, like, I think we do all have that a bit, but we might not be conscious of it. Like, we know that when we go to the countryside, a certain part of the country, like, oh yeah, I really like it there. Just as simple as that, I love it in Kerry, or oh yeah, I don't like going to Cork or something.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
know, but like, we just know those things.
Yeah, I kind of know it without knowing it or knowing why. Yeah, so something you say like you said people are at different levels. I agree, but also people come to things from different angles. So for
Yeah,
me,
I think that's what I meant really.
starting point where someone else might connect to a different way. I
Yeah,
think it might not be the starting point for everyone, but I think the body awareness is really important because I think it's easier to separate ourselves from nature when we're in our heads
yeah,
because reality we're in our heads, but we're in our body, we're in reality. And like we share
yeah,
70% of our DNA with a dandelion flower. So
yeah,
tuning in, our body is what we share all the same, like we're made up of the same basic chemicals. But like even a meditation I really like doing is like when you're out, like with around some plants and stuff, when you're breathing like a particle of an oxygen particle or a carbon particle that was part of them like a few minutes ago could be part of you now.
oh yeah, that's really cool.
So
Like we don't often think about stuff like that, isn't it? But that's really cool. I love when I think about things in a very kind of simplistic black and white way like that. It's very cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that's just
Um,
a way to be like in a way that we're really, really tangibly connected. So
yeah.
yeah, I think that's yeah, tuning into body is very helpful in those
Yeah.
ways.
I think that should be the basic thing for life. Really, it's being out of your head.
Mm,
And I think most people know that, like we know like that when we think too much we get caught up in thoughts, like we suffer, really.
yeah.
So really like the fundamental thing, the foundation before we do anything else is to just really it's just that being present. And that just means like not going on a story trip in our minds, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
you're present with you're here with what is,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is. I feel like today now when I go out and all, I'm going to be much more like aware of my environment and all. So, yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you, and I feel like just having the conversation was kind of inspiring, and I kind of feel like something in my being is like stirred up, like, and that's it. Like it's just like an invitation to be more conscious of
Mm-hmm.
our environment and be attuned, attuned to it. And it would be quite cool. I might pick a plant that I like, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe my tree there. I've kind of been trying to like connect with my tree. It's been in my garden obviously my whole life, and it's a big beautiful tree. So thank you for very much for this conversation. I hope that it will be inspiring for some people, and I imagine it would. Like I feel like I'd be interested to listen to it. I was
Mm-hmm.
interested to have the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It was good talking to you about it.